Hello everyone, and welcome back into another episode of Matt Sports Talk. And in this video, we are going to be we're going to be talking about the women's side of things, the updated RPI numbers there. And I mentioned, of course, in my last video, we did the men's RPI numbers. So we're going to be talking about the women's RPI numbers. And we will have another updated RPI rankings next Monday. And then we will have another one the following Monday on January 26th. Now, of course, a lot of the updated RPI numbers on January 26th are going to be a little bit skewed. Well, actually, no, I stand corrected, because the second half of Crossroads League play starts Saturday, January 24th. So, of course, I'm going to be recording these videos more than likely pretty much every Monday moving forward, talking about the each updated RPI rankings, as well as the ARC and the quad records when those get released coming up. Now, the first one of those is coming up next Tuesday, so make sure that you stay tuned for that. And if you are brand new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button down below so you are first notified whenever I upload new episodes, and please keep on subscribing. My goal is to hit 500 subscribers by the end of December of 2026. And for those of you that already are subscribed to my channel, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And please keep on subscribing, and please share this channel with your friends, your family, anybody that you know. Again, I really appreciate any feedback that you may provide me. So without further ado, let's dive into this. Now, of course, I'm going to be going over all the just the Crossroads League teams and the RPI that I'm going to talk about. Now, one thing of note is you have Freed Hardman out of Henderson, Tennessee, number 1 in the RPI. They have a really good chance of being number 1 in the country when those polls come out on Wednesday. And of course, I'm not going to be talking about the top 25 teams, but still, it's worth noting that Freed Hardman and William Carey out of Mississippi are the only 2 undefeated teams left in the whole entire NAIA. Freed Hardman 17-0, William Carey, I believe, is 14-0. So really, really amazing to see that. That is for sure. So starting in the Crossroads League, this is on the women's side. We have Marion, number 2 in the RPI, no surprise here, and their only loss coming to St. Francis, which was a 10-point upset win on this past Saturday, I might add. Now, Marion, they are ranked 16th in strength of schedule, so really, really good number there. Their opponents' winning percentage, 602, opponents, 585, so again, really good numbers all the way around there. Marion, for sure, locked into the national tournament, no question about that. I still think they are the best team in the conference, and I fully believe they will be that number 1 seed and win the Crossroads League regular season, no question about that. St. Francis, right behind them, number 3 in the RPI. They're 25th in strength of schedule, so again, really good numbers there. And for St. Francis, their opponents' winning percentage, 579. Their opponents, 566. So really, really good numbers there. St. Francis, a for sure lock into the national tournament. That is for sure. And they more than likely are going to be that number 2 seed in the Crossroads League tournament. At least that's how I see it right now. And for St. Francis, again, they have a really, really good chance. I think they have an excellent chance at hosting the opening 2 rounds of a national tournament coming up in mid-March. Same thing for Marion. So again, really, really going to be it's going to be exciting to see how that turns out. And then my next Crossroads League team down from there, you have Taylor, 17th in the RPI. Taylor took a little bit of a dip, I think, in the last RPI number. In fact, I'm going to look real quick on that to see where Taylor was. The last RPI number, yeah, Taylor was 14th in the last RPI. They are 17th this week. And in the last RPI, Marion was 1st. St. Francis was 10th. So St. Francis actually jumped 7 spots in the RPI since the last poll. Last week, Marion dropped 1 spot, which again, really no surprise because Marion's only loss was against St. Francis. So even though that was a massive upset, still a really, really good loss for Marion. But St. Francis, man, what a jump for them. And this is what happens when you beat ranked opponents. You are definitely going to take a big jump in the next ranking poll. That is for sure. And then, of course, Taylor, I mentioned them. They are 17th in the RPI this week. They were 14th last week. No surprise here why they dipped 3 spots. Their only loss in that time. Well, actually, their only losses since last Monday. Their two losses since then have both come against ranked opponents. They lost to number 20 Huntington this past Saturday, and then last Wednesday, Taylor lost to number 7 St. Francis. So really, again, really, really good losses for Taylor, and they're still a national tournament team. I think for sure they're a lock into the national tournament. And I know they're on a little bit of a losing skid right now. I don't think that continues. I think that more than likely, now, yes, could they dip to 10-8, maybe 9-9 in the conference? Yes. But again, I think that's the worst case scenario for them. I think more than likely you're probably going to see them somewhere around that 11-7, 12-6 mark. So again, really, really good numbers for them. I think they're for sure lock into a national tournament, no question about that. And now in terms of hosting, I know I've heard at least some a few thoughts that they potentially are a talk, or they potentially are a potential host site, I should say. I apologize for getting a little bit tongue-tied there. And for Taylor, 17th in the RPI, 41st in strength of schedule, so really, really good numbers there. 556 opponents winning percentage, 557 opponents winning percentage, so again, really, really good numbers there. And then for Spring Arbor, in the last poll, they were ranked 21st in the RPI. They're up 3 spots to 18th. And now, since last Monday, their wins came against Bethel out of Indiana. Of course, that I believe was, I'm trying to remember, I think it was, I know Spring Arbor, they hosted Bethel last Wednesday night, picked up a 5-point win there in a really, really tight game, and then of course they just beat Goshen on Saturday by 28 points. So again, really no surprise here why Spring Arbor has moved up, and they are off to a great start, 14-2 on the year. Their only losses on the year coming against 2 top 10 opponents, Marion and Rio Grande. So really, really good losses for the Cougars out of Michigan. Head coach John Williams and company, boy, what a job that he has done leading that team, turning them around there for sure, locking them in a national tournament, no question about that. And of course, they don't have a facility to host, so it's going to be interesting to see where they get sent in early March, that is for sure. And Spring Arbor, 511 for their opponents, winning percentage, 575 opponents, so really, really good numbers there. Their strength of schedule, though, is not great, 84th, so that is one thing that's hurting them at least a little bit in terms of strength of schedule. And then looking down the list from there, Huntington, 26th in the RPI. Again, no surprise here. Huntington was 29th in the RPI last week, and they're up 3 spots this week, so that's actually a little bit surprising, considering that last week for Huntington, I know why. I know why they fell 3 spots, because they had a huge upset loss at Bethel last Wednesday night. Now, I think one thing that saved Huntington from falling way below where they were last week, I think this only saving grace for them was picking up, at least what I would argue, a slight upset win over Taylor at home this past Saturday. Huntington's still perfect on their home floor, so I think that saved them picking up that home Taylor win, even though they had to work for every nickel and dime of that, especially late, as Taylor came back late and came up just a little bit short. But still, for Huntington, they're looking really, really good. I think for sure they're another lock into the national tournament right now, and they are 31st in strength of schedule, so really, really good numbers there. And actually, them, Marion, and Indiana Wesleyan are the 3 highest ranked teams in terms of strength of schedule remaining out of their remaining games. So again, really, really good numbers there. That's for sure. Huntington, 571 opponents winning percentage, 570 opponents. So again, really, really good numbers there. Of course, opponents win percentage, opponents winning percentage is also factored into the national tournament selection. So that's why I wanted to dive into that. And then this is quite a shock. This is Bethel out of Indiana, and now, believe it or not, they actually are 38th in the RPI right now. The last RPI number, they were 36th last week. They're 38th this week, so they only dropped 2 spots. And their only loss since last Monday was against Spring Arbor, so a really, really good loss for Bethel. And they are 12-5 now on the year, and now 4 of those 5 losses have all come in conference. Of course, they lost to Marion by 13, lost to Taylor by 14. So both of those 2 teams, really, really good losses for the Lady Pilots. And then, of course, they do have again that big upset win over Huntington last Wednesday night. So a really, really good resume booster for them. And then only a 5-point loss to Spring Arbor on Saturday, 5-point loss to Spring Arbor on Saturday And again, really, really good loss for Bethel. So believe it or not, Bethel actually does not have any bad losses in conference, at least right now, despite having a 3-4 conference record. And all of their conference losses have been really good losses. Taylor, Huntington, as well as Marion, and then Spring Arbor. So really, really for Bethel, this is not the same Bethel team that everybody expects or has seen in past seasons. That is for sure. Considering, like I mentioned, all 4 conference losses are excellent losses for Bethel. And are they a dark horse in the Crossroads to potentially get into the national tournament despite being down around, more than likely finishing in that number 6, 7, or 8 spot? There is a chance that they are a dark horse. I think, though, the odds of them getting into the national tournament might be, obviously, anything's possible, because you look at their remaining schedule. After they go to Grace on Wednesday night, they host, and then they play Goshen again, I believe, on the 28th of this month. Now, if they win those 2 games, the other 5 games in that stretch are all against the top 4 teams, and then, of course, Indiana Wesleyan added on to that. So, believe it or not, if Bethel can win at least 5 out of those 7, maybe 6 out of those 7, let's just say including an upset over the Wildcats, believe it or not, Bethel could actually make the national tournament, which would just be absolutely crazy. They were actually projected 6th in preseason, so they're exactly where they were projected to be. So this is, I would say right now, this would be my dark horse of the Crossroads League in terms of a national tournament team. So, and I know a lot of people aren't going to talk about Bethel, because people are going to say, oh, well, this is a team that's horrible every year. They're typically, down around that 7, 8, 9 spot. It's like they never beat any top 5 or top 6 team in the conference. They have the potential to do that this year, and we've seen that. Of course, they just upset a top 4 seed in the conference in Huntington last Wednesday for the 2nd straight year, at home, I might add, in Mishawaka. And then they almost upset Spring Arbor on the road on Saturday, and arguably they probably should have done that. So, this is a Lady Pilot team that, of course, they're led by Mariah Claywell, and as a senior this year, and of course, you can't forget about Gracie Lambs. Isabel Scales is actually the leading free throw percentage scorer in the Crossroads League this year. So, again, this is a dark horse selection pick for making the national tournament in the Bethel Lady Pilots. This is a team that I definitely would keep an eye on moving forward in the rest of conference play, especially if they're able to sweep the Lady Wildcats of Indiana Wesleyan both times this year. They host them coming up Saturday, and then they go to Indiana Wesleyan on Indiana Wesleyan Senior Day on February 21st to round out the regular season. So this is a Lady Pilot team that I would really, really pay close attention to moving forward. Now, obviously, it's going to be interesting to see where their ARC and their quad records stand coming up next Tuesday. I'm going to be recording a video once that is posted, talking about all of that, and also on the men's side as well. So make sure that you stay tuned for all of that next Tuesday, and recording an updated RPI number video coming up next Monday when that gets released as well for both the men and the women. So again, make sure that you stay tuned for that. And then on Sunday, recapping a video talking about recapping the games from Saturday. So again, make sure you stay tuned for that. That's going to be coming your way on Sunday. And then, of course, coming your way Thursday, we'll be recapping all the games from Wednesday night. So again, make sure you stay tuned for all of that. And then, of course, and finally, rounding out the Crossroads League team, at least ranked in the RPI, is Indiana Wesleyan. And boy, this is, now, the Wildcats in the last RPI number were ranked 51st, so not great, but obviously they could have definitely have improved. Now, as of today, they are down to 59th in the RPI. They have fallen 7 spots since last week. Now, they did beat Mount Vernon Nazarene on the road by 40 on last Wednesday. So, again, really good win for the Wildcats. Obviously, Mount Vernon's the second worst team in the conference. So, yeah, while it's a win, and really with the season I was having, that really is a big win. But then, of course, having their first bad loss in conference to Grace on Saturday, that is what really hurt them. And and of course, now, do I think they're a national tournament team right now? As crazy as what it sounds, and crazy as what I'm about to say, do I think they're a national tournament team right now? No. Do I think that they have the potential to get to that point and turn things around in order to make the national tournament? Yes. I think more than likely for the Wildcats, their only chance of making the national tournament is running the table in the Crossroads League tournament. I don't see the Wildcats getting an at-large bid right now. Now, being 59th in the RPI, remember that 50th to 59th in the RPI, that means that you're roughly down on that bottom of the paper, not quite in the danger zone, so to speak, completely missing out of a national tournament, but they have no more room for any margin of error. They're to the point now where they have to string together some big wins, and this is just unfamiliar territory for them. Now, of course, this is a team that is struggling this year. They lost pretty much just about their whole entire starting five lineup last year. So from last year, I should say. So, obviously that puts things into perspective. So, now, is this a Lady Wildcat team that can improve from this? Yes. But in my personal opinion, I just think that they just got to string together some wins. And of course, they are on the bubble. And as crazy as crazy as this is, believe it or not, they actually are on the bubble for not even making the Crossroads League tournament. Now, do I think they are going to make the Crossroads League tournament? Yes, because I think at bare minimum, the Wildcats are going to at least get to 5 conference wins because they go to Goshen on the 24th. They host Mount Vernon Nazarene on February 11th. Now, those two teams are the worst two teams in the conference. So, on paper, Indiana Wesleyan should easily win both those games. Now, the other thing is that now if they only win those 2 games, is there a chance that Mount Vernon Nazarene gets to 6 or 7 conference wins? Yes, because the MVNU still has to play Goshen twice. They still have to play Bethel a second time at home. They got to play Huntington at home. They got to play Grace at home. And remember, this is a Mount Vernon team that already beat Grace this year on the road. They should have beaten Huntington on the road as they were up 15 points at one point and couldn't close it out. And this is a Lady Cougar team that probably should have beaten Bethel on the road, even though they lost by 20, but they got outscored by 13 in the fourth quarter. Now, if they had shot the ball better and not had a horrible fourth quarter, I think they beat Bethel on the road, honestly. So, as crazy as it sounds, is there a chance Mount Vernon Nazarene gets to 6 conference wins and Iowa only finishes at 5? Yes. And again, that sounds absolutely crazy, but that is a real possibility scenario. So, for the Wildcats, and I think too, and of course, I think too, part of it is they've struggled. And again, and I'm not trying to, be like other people, here on YouTube or, that host other shows that talk about the Wildcats. I'm not trying to be like those people at all or sound like those people, and I'm not trying to copy anybody else that does these types of videos. Pardon me. But one thing that I do agree with one thing that I do agree with other people that I've seen do these types of videos is this is a Lady Wildcat team that, yes, they're having a down year. Nobody really expected it. However, they've had a ton of injuries this year, and they have just not been able. And not just injuries, but they have really struggled to put a full, solid 40 minutes of basketball together each and every game. They've been way too inconsistent pretty much the whole entire year. Now, can you fix all of that? Yes. Is all that coachable? Yes. But for the Wildcats this year, moving forward, I do agree that, you look at their road record this year. This is a team that has really, really struggled on the road this year compared to last year. They went perfect on the road last year. Now, the difference last year was they had the dream team. They went 33-1 last year with everybody fully healthy. And of course, their only loss last year outside. Well, you look at them last year. Now they lost 3 total games. Now 2 of those 3 losses were without their all-time leading scorer Lily Frazier and their best player by far. So 2 of those 3 losses are a little bit skewed. So their only loss, with everybody fully healthy, was against Dort of a national title game when they lost by 9. They got it down to 5 at one point. They trailed earlier in the game by 25. So, obviously for the Wildcats, I know it's unfamiliar territory for them, but they're to the point now where they don't have any more room for margin of error, and of course they need to pick up wins against teams on the bottom, not just the 2 worst teams in the conference like Goshen and Mount Vernon, but the Wildcats have to put together some more wins on the bottom. They need to beat Bethel twice. They need to beat Grace the second time at Grace, which again is going to be a really, really tough game. I've been at Grace. It's a fantastic venue, I might add. Big theater type room, but a really, really tough environment to play in. So I think the Wildcats have to win that game. They have to sweep Bethel. They obviously need to beat Goshen and Mount Vernon the second time. And then, of course, once you get past that, teams on the bottom, you look to the top 5. They still got to play Taylor a second time, St. Francis a second time, Huntington the second time. And then, of course, they still got to play Marion twice, one of which is going to be this coming Wednesday night, 2 days from now. And so now out of those games, if you're the Wildcats, I think you have to win 3 out of the 5 games against the top opponents. They still got to play, I mentioned Marion twice. They still got to play Spring Arbor again, Huntington again, St. Francis again, and Taylor again. Now, out of those top 5, I think they need to win 3 of those. Ideally, probably Taylor, Huntington, and Spring Arbor. As hard as what those games are going to be, I think the Wildcats have to win at least those 3, plus the 2 against Bethel, which obviously would put them at 5 more wins. The second one against Mount Vernon, and then the second one against Goshen, and the second one against Grace. If the Wildcats win 8 out of the last 11, that would put them at 11-7 in the conference. And if they win, if they win out of the 11, if they win 8 and lose 3, they'd be sitting 17-11. They would still, and at that point, they actually would more than likely have a really good chance of getting an at-large bid in the national tournament, even if they don't run the Crossroads League tournament. Now, in that scenario, if they do finish 11-7 in conference, do I think they're going to be a top 4 seed? No. I think more than likely your top 4 seeds are going to be Marion, St. Francis, Spring Arbor, and Huntington. And then I think Taylor will be the 5 seed, and then I really think the Wildcats, now if the Wildcats can be 11-7, they do have a chance of getting a top 5 spot, maybe a top 4. So, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think right now, more than likely for the Wildcats, they're probably looking somewhere around that 6 or 7 seed as things stand right now. But again, if they win 8 out of the last 11 games, there's a chance they could get into the top 5. Now, that would really help them. That is for sure. But, you look at them, they really just don't have any consistent scoring this year other than Addie Hovey and Ayla Krieger. So, but again, obviously, anybody on the bench can get red hot at just the right time. We've seen that with Ellie Kelleher this year. Kylie Bettinger, in terms of a starters, played really, really well. So, obviously all those things are a good possibility. But for the Wildcats, I think they really need to put a good, solid string of wins together. And again, I'm not trying to, sound like anybody else that's done these videos or any of that. But I think that the Wildcats, if they can win 8 out of the last 11, which conceivably is doable, excluding St. Francis, excluding Marion, even if they win 7 out of the last 11 and get to 10-8 in conference and be, 16-12, would they have a chance at being in the national tournament? Yes. Now, in terms of seeding, they probably, in that scenario, would still be roughly about I would say about an 11-14 seed in that scenario. So, again, it's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. That is for sure. And obviously, if they could get to 10-8 in the conference, I think that would be a huge improvement for them, especially next year, as they're going to be getting in a lot of really, really good players, including all the returners, if all the returners come back, which I believe at this point they will. And then, of course, you look at, the transfer portal. If you're able to pick up, 3-4 players in the portal in terms of power forwards or centers, that's obviously going to really, really help you as well in terms of size. So I think the Wildcats next year have a really, really good chance at being a top, at least I'd say somewhere between 3rd and 5th next year, honestly. Maybe 3rd and 4th. We'll see how all that plays out, but it's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. Now, if you did enjoy this video and found it super helpful and informative, please leave me a like down below, comment, or subscribe. Any one of those options helps me out greatly, and I truly appreciate any feedback that you may provide me. Thanks so much for tuning in this video. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you on Thursday, recapping all the games from Wednesday. God bless.